Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Life After DD214. Today, I have with me a very special guest, Sergio. Sergio, how are you doing, my friend?
Good, man. Good to see you.
You too. Haven't seen you in a while. What you been up to?
Been living life, taking care of my family, trying to pay these bills. You know how it is.
Yeah, indeed, especially with your two little ones.
Yes, yeah. I got a 9-year-old and a 11-month-old that's just now learning how to walk. It's an eventful house. You got a lot going.
Yeah, definitely sounds like it. So, Sergio, I know you from our gym,
Yep.
and I recently discovered that you and I were in the Army around the same time. So let's jump into that. Why and when did you join the Army?
I joined the Army back in 2005. I was 23 years old. At the time, I attempted college. College was a little bit more expensive than I had anticipated. I couldn't find a cosigner for loans to keep going to college because I wasn't smart enough to get a scholarship or anything. So had to stop going to college. Moved to Houston, worked there for a little while, and was kind of just stuck. I was actually working at Texas Children's Hospital at the time. $10 an hour, and wasn't really getting anywhere. A relationship that I had coming out of college was falling apart. So I was like, you know what? I need a scenery change. I need to get out of here. And a good buddy of mine who I had met in college he was in Ranger Bat when he was in. We met in college. Told me all about the Army, this and that. So I decided one day, you know what? I'm going to just give the Army a shot. Give it a try. I need to change my scenery up. I need to give myself some more options in life.
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to finish school, and at the time didn't have a way to finish. And I was like, well, I'll just get that GI Bill and make it work for me. So there I am, 23 years old. 2005, decided to join the Army. Went in as a 13 Sierra, which is a field artillery surveyor. Went down to MEPS, picked my job, all that good stuff. And they were saying, they told me I could either enter the delayed entry program, or I could ship out on a plane that was going to Fort Jackson 10 days later. So I said, put me on the first thing smoking. So I headed out 10 days later after MEPS and started my Army career at Fort Jackson. After basic, he went to AIT at Fort Sill in Oklahoma. Ended up at my first and only duty station, glorious Fort Bliss out in El Paso.
You did a great job of trying to get out of Texas.
You know what? I actually, because you know how in AIT they give you like a little dream sheet, and they said, put down your top three, your top three duty stations you'd like to go to. My top was Fort Hood, and I didn't. And now knowing what I know about Fort Hood, that probably I don't know why they didn't stick me there, because everybody hates going to Fort Hood. I wanted to be closer to Austin, and Fort Bliss was not on my list. I had Fort Hood. There was a lot of, at the time. There was a lot of guys going to Germany, so I had Germany on the list, and I think I had which is the base in. It's like in the Pacific Northwest. I forgot the name of the base. I had that.
Fort Lewis?
Yes. And I had that on the list. Anyway, it stuck me at Bliss. So went there. And as soon as I got to my unit, we started training up, because it was the end of 2005. By the time I got there, going into 2006, we immediately went into deployment mode. Started training up, did a rotation in NTC. It was October 2006. I started my first 15-month deployment. We were deployed just south of Mosul, so in the small city of called Kiara, and I forgot the air base that it was. It was called Q West. That was the name of the air base we stayed at. So we were there. did some ops south and around the southern area of Mosul. We came back the end of December of '07, and all of our chalks finally got back to stateside the beginning of January '08. So I was lucky. I was like on the first planes out. So I got to leave at like I think I got back in the States maybe Christmas Eve of,
Man.
of '07, and the rest of our battalion or brigade got back like second week of January '08. So
Oh man, that's
it
awesome.
was it was a brutally long deployment from our first deployment.
Well, yeah, absolutely. 15 months. That's in itself is long. I just missed when I first got in, I just missed the 18-month deployment from '06 to '08.
Whew.
I do still feel bad for all those folks that had to do that.
Yeah, on my first deployment, they gave us a choice of when we kind of wanted to pick our R&R leave or 2 weeks leave. I counted about 6 months in, wanted to do 6 months there, go home, and then have like less than 6 months on the way back, right? Well, did the first 6 months, went home, got some good like R&R I needed at that point, and then on my flight back, the orders came down to get extended for 3 more months. I was like, now I'm going to be stuck there for 9 months. It
Yeah,
was just, it was, yeah, it was brutal. It was brutal at first.
yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. During my first deployment, we shot some guns. We were a field artillery unit, so we had to shoot. We did a lot of what they call terrain denial, sending some rounds down range for terrain denial. We're blowing out waddies and stuff like that, but that's pretty much all we did as far as um, field artillery. I was actually in uh, our battalion personal security detachment, our PSD. So I got to go do some cool training before we deployed. We got sent off. Me and a bunch of guys got sent off to the Direct Action Resource Center in Little Rock, Arkansas, where we did some high threat, high security training. It was run by a whole bunch of like tier one guys, former tier one guys. And it was called the name of the class that we took was Advanced Urban Warfighter. So that was pretty cool. That was a pretty good time. We spent about a week there doing all kinds of cool guy stuff. And then we came back and we were part of like our battalion PSD. My platoon's main mission was obviously personal security for our battalion commander. We would escort him to and from meetings with town sheikhs, with other diplomats, other officers. We were basically their bodyguard unit. So we'd go with them wherever they needed to go. My battalion commander that time, he was one of those battalion commanders that would always want to be outside the wire because his guys were outside the wire, so he needed to be outside the wire. So our platoon had the record for most times outside the wire. Because sometimes we'd have other platoons that would go stay off the fob and little combat outposts, but they'd come back after a while and they'd switch out. But every day we would go, and we were outside the wire every day. I forget how many days in a row. It was over 300 days in a row that we went before we had like a break. But it was a pretty brutal time. Very very tired. A lot of Monster Energy drinks. A lot of boiled water in the
Yep.
in the water bottles. So
Listen, you don't have to be facetious. I know that it's probably going to be wild tigers instead of Monster Energy
you're right.
drinks and some
You're
ribbits.
right. Yes, we. I don't know what it was. The wild tigers are always a little bit more effective than any kind of ribbit or monster we could find at the little shopette on post or on the fob. Yeah, wild tigers were legit.
Yeah, we had one local national store that was allowed to be on our little JSS.
Mm-hmm.
Just constantly, we would just stock up wild tigers. He would just come in with cases and cases and cases, and we would sell them out within the hour,
Oh,
just so that we could stay awake.
yeah. Oh yeah.
especially for you've got a battalion commander who enjoys going out.
Yeah, he went to every meeting, because at the time the mission focus was winning hearts and minds of the locals, and so he went out. He was very well known in the area, but he also liked to augment security for our assault platoons and stuff like that. Whenever there was a high value target in the area, he was going to go get him. So we were there to augment security for those guys as well. So kind of play like a dual role, like a defense and offensive type, element that we were playing. So it was fun at times.
Yeah, at times.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're getting back January of 07?
Well, I got back December, and then the rest of the unit got back January, like a couple weeks later, and then I wanted to PCS, and I knew at that point, I knew that I wasn't going to stay. I wasn't going to be a lifer, right? I was going to do my 4-year commitment and get my education benefits and get out. So I tried to PCS to Hood again because I was like, I had little short of 2 years left at that point, and I wanted to be closer to home because I knew I was going to move back to Austin. So again, I tried to PCS to Fort Hood, and they were like, "No, you're actually need you to," because they were reflagging from 4th Brigade 1st Cav to 4th Brigade 1st Armored Division, and they needed people to populate their new unit that they were standing up there. I get stuck at Bliss once again, and then same song and dance. I guess we had about a 6-month lull in training, and then summer of '08 we start gearing up again. Start getting ready to go. Hit NTC in February of '09, and I was supposed to get out. In November of '09, and I was like, man, I'm barely gonna make this cutoff, And I was gonna, my thoughts were gonna be, I'm gonna be stuck on rear D, and I'm just gonna cruise the last few months of my contract. But that wasn't the case. They gave me the good old stop loss. So I deployed once again. Deployed in, when was it? May 2009 through May 2010. We were in the southern region of Iraq at this point, down around Nasiriyah, and I was an E4 in my last platoon, but they were like, since you've already been in a PSD element, we need you to train these guys. At that point, I went to the E5 board, got my stripes, made E5, and I was one of the NCOs that helped train all the other guys for our PSD platoon. Went to combatives 1 and 2. I was a combatives trainer. It was like a battalion level trainer for my battalion. Went to some other CQB schools in between there. I also trained everybody in my platoon, a couple other platoons as well. Give them a CQB block of training before that deployment. We get deployed, like I said, to Nasiriyah, southern Iraq, and then did the same thing. We weren't taking around a battalion commander. Though we were just doing security for the local contractors who were trying to rebuild schools and not libraries, but schools and medical facilities and all this other stuff. So we would take the local contractors and have meetings with the town officials or whoever it was. We'd coordinate those meetings and get those guys where they needed to go. Super quiet deployment, really, really boring. I got to see the ziggurat of That was pretty cool. It's
that sounds fun.
Yeah, 4,000-year-old ziggurat in the area where all civilization basically started. We did get, I think we hit maybe one of the trucks in our convoy hit one IED that missed them. So that was about the most of that, any kind of action or whatever we saw. So it's pretty boring, So I was ready to get back, I was stop loss at the time. Good thing about getting stop loss is we had that extra $500 a month that we were getting paid, so didn't mind that. But it was just after a while, it just got really, really boring, over there, and I'm just ready to go back. Um, I don't know if you remember, we got stalled there a little longer because at the time there was some big volcano going off in Iceland that like basically grounded all flights. So
Yeah, the volcanic ash was blowing so
yes,
hard and so far
yeah,
that it grounded a whole lot of flights. Just trying to get out of Germany
yeah,
was almost impossible. Yeah, I remember that.
we were stuck. Yeah, we got stuck there for a couple of weeks, and finally it cleared up enough where we were able to come back. And I got back. I guess it was May. Yeah, May. Yeah, May 2010 is when I got back, and we went through medical and all that other stuff again. I forgot what the process that they called it. But coming back from deployment, you get all your like go through all the medical stations and everything, make sure you can still see straight and all this other nonsense. So we did all that stuff, and then I immediately just started, gathering all my stuff and trying to out process. And I forgot what date it was. I think it was at the end of May we got back. So, and then June, I'm out processing. And then by July, I think it was July 10th of 2010, for Bliss is in my rearview mirror. So that was when I got out. So sums up my Army career.
So you decided that, well, you knew right away, at least part way through your first contract, that you were only going to stay there just to get your GI Bill and then beat feet.
Yep. Yep.
So you just unfortunately had to be stop lost for one more deployment, which I get that. I've seen that happen way too many times, especially like when we grew up. So now you just get back from your second deployment, you're ready to go, you're out processing at the exact same time that you're doing all the redeployment activities. Did you have any like anxiety or like hesitation or anything that was kind of like, maybe I want to stay or I don't know what's about to happen next?
Yeah, I did. There was that anxiety and there was a hesitation because as boring as my last deployment was, it was still like super super tense because you never know what's going to happen when you go outside the wire. So I didn't have a lot of time to like really think of my next steps. All I know is that I'm getting back and I'm getting out. And that's what's in my mind. Like I'm getting, as soon as I get back, I can't wait to start out processing. I can't wait to not have to be in formation anymore at 5 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was. That was all I was really, focused on, thinking about it at the time. But when I got back, I was like, oh, it's real. Like we're getting out. You know, I didn't have a great like idea or plan in place on how I was going to go about. I mean, my mom and my dad my dad moved to Mexico in 2009, so he was gone. That wasn't an option for me to come back to. I really didn't have a lot of time to actually like search for a place to live because I'm trying to process. I didn't take like a 4 day pass or anything like that to like come back to Austin to look for a place to live. So I
Right.
didn't know like where my next landing spot was going to be. My mom still lived in South Austin, so that was my option then. So, and like I said, I didn't have like a whole lot of a laid out plan, a well thought out plan like I should have before I got out. I wanted to go back to school, so you know what? And come to think about it, I can't really remember like the process on how like I started my GI Bill. I forgot the whole process. I think we had to like contact the VA or something, give them some paperwork on the school we decided to go to. I forgot how all that stuff went down.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes. The VA department at the school be helping with that. Like they'll ask for like a certificate of eligibility. Then they just kind of calculate how much the GI Bill covers. Because in certain cases, like especially for me, I only received 7. For them, they had to do a little bit of calculations. Where in other cases, they don't have to worry about that. The GI Bill will cover everything for 1 degree at a time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I had to like figure all that stuff out because when you're out processing, they don't really like tell you. They don't tell you, um, how to get that started, who to contact. That's something that would have been really helpful. Like if they asked, where are you going, where are you moving to, and gave me some kind of like contacts or some kind of support in that area to call. Hey, get a hold of this counselor at AC, Austin Community College, whatever it is. When you get back, they'll help you out. They'll direct you, get you lined out and squared away, and get you where you need to go. That never happened. So you just kind of had, we kind of had to figure that stuff out on our own. So it was a bit of a learning curve. That's some information that would have been helpful as I was out processing.
So when you're sorry for interrupting, but so when you were doing your out processing, they didn't have you doing like a transition assistance program, like a Soldier for Life TAP program or ACAP, whatever it may have been, or maybe they did and we just kind of rushed.
We did. I remember ACAP. We did that, but it was more of like a rush thing.
Okay.
It was more like they didn't want to pay me any more stop loss pay. You know what I mean? They were kind of just like, here, do this, check this box. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to do, so on and so forth. And I don't really remember a whole lot of the ACAP stuff that we had to do. I remember them giving us instruction on what building we had to go to on post. Show up there with your paperwork, so they can sign some stuff off. You sit through like a 30-minute class that you're not really paying attention to. You sign your name that you said you were there. They sign your paperwork that that says you were there, and you're on to the next whatever it is. Check off the next box. So yeah, that's what I remember about all the ACAP process and all that stuff getting out. It was in a rush to check boxes and to get out.
Yeah. And what year was that again?
It was in 2010.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 2010.
Because I was gonna say, like, I got out maybe 4 years later, and my experience was definitely different. We had like 2 weeks of classes that we had to attend.
Oh yeah.
For all those things. So
yeah, it wasn't that when I got out. It was definitely. I would say it was about a week long. What took longest was to out process from CIF. That was it.
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
That was So CIF was just a debacle. What took the longest for me to out process was that, really. Well, all the other stuff, like honestly, it was kind of like a blur.
That makes sense. And so now you're moving, and you fall into one of these interesting categories too, right? Like, granted, you are getting out, right? And a lot of times when the support comes from the base or the post, it's the local area that is like, hey, we can help you. We can help get you hired, get you a new job. The problem is you're not planning on staying in El Paso.
Exactly.
You're moving to Austin.
Yeah, exactly. My plan, exactly right. I know a lot of guys that got out and stayed in El Paso. They stayed and worked in El Paso. They built their lives there, and good for them. There's a lot of guys that get out and a lot of guys in my unit that I still keep in contact with on Facebook that are super successful. And they got out and lived in that area, did well for themselves. And El Paso just wasn't my thing. I was just I was ready to come back, and so that wasn't an option for me. My only option at that time was to come back and live with my mom. But I ended up meeting a girl before I officially moved back, and she was like, "Well, you can just you can come live with me." And I was like, "Sweet, I don't have to put any kind of pressure on my mom and or encroach on her apartment, whatever she was living in at the time, and I could kind of have my own space, but started dating this girl like when I got out, and then things kind of like took a weird turn after that. Kind of got mixed up in the wrong crowd, and drugs came into play, and I look back on it now, and I attribute that to what I should have done after getting out was gone to some kind of therapy for my mental health. Because doing two back-to-back deployments and then getting out and not really a steady plan in place, that puts a lot of pressure on you. And I think, unfortunately, I got mixed up in a little bit of a drug scene getting out, and it became an issue. It became a problem, and I think that was just me coping with what I was just leaving, right? So I got wrapped up into that nonsense for about a year after I got out, where something inside me, a switch just flipped, and I knew, I was like, you know what, this is not what I want to do. This is not who I am. And I went, and it was, let's see, December 2011. Remember I said my dad moved to Mexico? I flew down there with him. I bought a one-way ticket down to Mexico, and I said, I'm going to go down there. I'm going to get my head straight. I'm going to get my priorities in order. And once I do that and have a plan, I'll come back. So went down there, stayed down there for a while, got a plan in place, and then came back a few months later. At the time, like I said, I was wrapped up kind of in like in a little bit of I had a bit of a drug problem. Was down there and became completely sober, and had my head on straight. Had my priorities straight when I came back. Had a goal in mind, and went and did it. I came back, and that's when I got a job here in Austin with a mechanical contractor. Luckily, I had some friends that worked for this company. They got me in, because sometimes it's who you know that gets you ahead.
Absolutely.
They gave me a shot. Got a good job with them, and worked on getting my disability process going. Got my disability ratings approved, and then just kind of went from there, man. Once I came back, I had a plan in place. I just started living how I wanted to live. Started collecting disability, and then working at the mechanical contractors at the mechanical contractor here out of.
Awesome. The right pieces were falling into place.
Yeah, the pieces were falling into place when I got my thoughts in order. So
yeah. So you went and got your VA rating and you applied for disability compensation. What was that like for you? Did you utilize a VSO? Did you just try to go through it?
I did
on your own, or
I did. I went through Texas Veterans Commission, so it wasn't like the D, like a DAV or another like others like private company. Texas Veterans Commission, submitted my submitted my claims and went through the whole CMP process, whatever it was. They got all my medical records from the Army, all these medical records that they needed, and it wasn't too long of a process. It took about 6 months for everything to go through, and I've had some increases since the first time, because things have gotten worse. But it wasn't that painful of a process. I think when people get like where it becomes like difficult for them is when they get something like denied, and then they have to go through like the appeals process. So the appeals process, like you get thrown in the back of the line, and who knows how many cases are in front of you. So I think that's where people have they get hung up a lot around the disability process through the VA.
And there's a lot of people out there who just don't know where to start.
That's true. Yeah, I had friends that got out, and they told me go to this office in the at the VA in Austin, and sign the little sheet and they'll help you out. So that's where I went, was the Texas Veterans Commission, and by the guidance of like some of my other veteran friends that I had.
Right. And that jumps back to that whole, hey, I'm leaving El Paso. I'm not staying in El Paso. I'm moving to Austin. Other than your mom, you really didn't have any network that you built off of
Right.
or to work with. So, but you created one by finding some veteran
Yep.
friends.
I mean, I will say, like, that's any veteran friend that I've kept in touch with. They've always been available for me if I have any questions about anything. Regarding any kind of like education process, disability process, whatever it is. I always ask I always ask one of my veteran friends. They're always there, to give me some kind of guidance, and give me the information that I need to become like successful. I've never had like one of my veteran friends just like leave me on red. Like, they're always there for me. So it's one network I've always been able to count on, obviously. And it didn't even necessarily have to be a guy that I've served with. Veterans in general, they've always been solid. And vice versa. If any of my veteran friends came to me needing help with anything, and they know that. Everybody that knows me knows that I would always be there to give them advice. I mean, if they need help moving, I probably wouldn't help them, but I'd help them find a moving company.
There you go.
But I don't know if I'd help them physically. I'd help them. I'd direct them in the right, and put them in the right direction and help them pay for it if they needed to.
Nice. Yeah. So you had all these issues that you were battling through, right? And you finally just something flipped, and you made that choice, that healthy choice to just say, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make this plan and I'm gonna execute it.
Yep.
And then what the other thing that I really enjoyed was that you had a network, whether it was a veteran network or not, but you had a network that got you your first job.
Yes. Yeah. Throughout my life, I've always had like a few good friends that I can count on for whatever. And at the time, a friend of mine, I think his uncle was a director of the quality control department at this mechanical contracting company. I told him, hey man, I really need a job. Like, I really need to get on my feet. I just got out of all this mess. I need some kind of stability. So, I mean, again, counting on my network, he put me in front of the right people I needed to see, and interviewed with the company, interviewed pretty well. And I started the next week. Your network's important. The people that, the friends that you make along the way, it's always good to keep close connection with most of those people, because you never know when, you'd be in a place to help them, or vice versa, they'll be in a place to help you. So having a network is super important. And it was critical for me to help me out in the spots that I was in, to help me get out of the bad spots that I was in.
Right. Right. That's awesome. And so did you end up going to school?
Yeah. So I did go back to school. This was years later. So I kind of, jumped around. I'd worked at mechanical contractors for a while. And then I decided, because I was a bodyguard in the Army, I was like, and a buddy of mine, matter of fact, who was one of my groomsmen in my wedding, he was living out in California. Oh, I'm sorry, he was living in Florida at the time, and he was part of like this, like a private security firm out of Florida. Told me about this private security school called ESI in Grand Junction, Colorado, and they were doing like executive protection classes, and you could also use your GI Bill to pay for it. So,
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, and I was like, well, you know what, I'm pretty good at this bodyguarding thing. Let's go get a credential so we can put some letter suit behind my name and make it like official. So we go do that. He drives his Ford Ranger up from Florida, picks me up in Austin, and we go we go drive up to Grand Junction, and we're out there for a couple months doing a couple of different classes, doing an executive protection class, and also doing a special operations protection class. And I was like, I want to go and do this bodyguarding thing. And so we do that. After the classes are done, I come back to Austin, and then I was like, well, since I don't have any contracts right now, I need to do something in the meantime to work while I'm working on like nailing down a contract. In the bodyguarding world, it's also a lot of networking, marketing yourself, marketing your skills. And so while I was getting that in order, I was a security agent at one of the hotels downtown in Austin. And then when I was working there, I met my oldest son's mom, and we dated for a little while, and then I wasn't making a whole lot of money working at the hotel. Since that relationship started, I wanted to be home rather than away, and so that kind of put my plans on being a contract bodyguard. Kind of put those on hold for a while, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah, I wanted to be present in that relationship. So, but eventually, I was like,
yeah, that's a wide contrast from what you did while in the Army too, right? Like you're constantly away while you're doing PSD. You're constantly on the road. Now you're in a relationship, and you're like, I don't have to do that, right? Like back then, I had to do that because the Army said I had to do that. I'm in a position now where I don't absolutely have to do that. So
yeah.
I think that's admirable that you decided that family time is more important.
It was, I do, as you know me now, like I value my family great. That's like the biggest thing for me is family, being around my family, being close to family. I don't think I could. Nothing against military families at all. I know a lot of military families, great military families.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, husband and wife, the closest they could be. Best friends. I know a lot of military families like that, and I commend that. Um, that's a hard position to be in for a relationship. In my eyes, I wouldn't be able to do that because I like to be present and there when I have a relationship. So that's that's one of the reasons I was never really like in a relationship per se when I was in the military is because I just didn't. I'm not the kind of guy that likes that wants to be away. Like I want to be with the person. Um, anyway, that was a little tangent. So working at the hotel, and she, we're like, well, we need a little bit more income. So I didn't do the bodyguard thing, but I got a job. I got a job out in the oil field for a while.
Okay.
Went out there for about 7 months, on and off. We had a 3-week on, 1 week off rotation, so I was kind of home, but mostly not. When I was during that time, she got pregnant with my first son. So I was like, okay, well, now I really have to be home, So that job went aside, and I got a job at the post office because there's a lot of veterans at the post office. A lot of us migrate to the post office for whatever reason, and became a mail carrier. For 6-ish years. During that time, my son was born. I think he was about 2 years old. And then me and his mom decided to split. And then that's when I was like, well, I need to go ahead and use this GI Bill. And I went back to school. So I was working full time at the post office. And then I would come home and do online school at night. So at that time, it was tough. That was probably one of the toughest 3 years of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had done I was in school previously a year before I joined the army.
Right. and you were running out of money.
Yeah, exactly. So I was going to school, working full time at the post office, and our custody it still has been from the very get go to now. We do week on, week off with
Okay.
my son. Um, so we would do week on, week off, and I would still be, I'd be dad when I came home with him until he was showered, bathed, or showered and fed and put down to sleep, and then I'd get back on the computer and finish school, and did that for about 3 years, and got my degree in 2000. I was in 2021. I graduated.
So pretty recent. Congratulations.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, I graduated with a bachelor's in project management with a specialization in construction management.
That's
Yeah,
awesome. That's
I
fantastic.
was at the time, I was in the post office, and there was obviously a lot of construction. This was back in 28.
Hmm.
Yeah, 2018, and South Austin, this whole area was just blowing up with new construction, and I was like, well, if I go to school for construction management, there's a lot of job security in that.
Yeah.
So that's what I picked, and went into got my degree in construction management, and now uh, I've been I got my first job building residential houses in 2020 during COVID. But yeah, got my degree in 2021, and been doing that ever since.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome. I think it's really nice also to hear that there's actually a success here, right? You did your 4-year degree in 3 years, and reason being is because you were able to get credits transferred
yes,
from your previous year. A lot of people, when they go through that whole process, they find out that like transfer or credits are not transferring.
yeah,
They have to restart. We have to redo everything. Um, so I'm glad to hear that actually something was able to transfer over for you. That way you didn't have to do so many years,
yeah. It wasn't.
especially trying to do post office and online
Yeah,
school at the same
it
time.
was. It was brutal. I had uh, lucky for me, unlucky for me, I had a walking route. So I would walk about 8 to 10 miles a day, and in all weather. And you know how Texas summers are, and
But yeah,
still come home and be dad. Had to be on it, and still finish, a 2 3 page paper, whatever the weekly assignment was. Um, and then at the end of I think there were 8 week. They call them trimesters. I don't know. They were 8 weeks long. At the end of 8 weeks, we had like a big project, a big 10 to 15 page paper we had to write at the end of the 8 weeks. Still had to do that.
yeah,
It was tiring nonetheless. This was before Chat GPT, mind you.
yes, it's
We
true.
actually had to write things. So
What school was it, if you don't mind me asking?
it was Colorado State. It was their global campus. So it's the Colorado State University, and they have a global, like, an online school. Funny enough, I chose that school because a buddy of mine who I went to high school with, who was also a veteran, who's a former Marine. He was actually living in Colorado at the time, um,
Hmm.
and he told me about the school he was going to and what he did and what he. So I was just like, dude, I can do that. I can do I can do construction. You know what I mean? So again, another veteran friend of mine gave me the idea to go. Hey, here's who you call. This is the person you call. This is the person you email, and they'll get you started. So it was
Yeah,
pretty cool.
that's awesome to hear. Just that network of friends, network of veterans, just kind of helping each other out. And I think that that's one thing that we always had in common. I think, especially between us, we want to help other veterans out.
Yeah,
Um, whatever it may be. Like you said, it's not just people that you personally served with, it's anybody out there.
yeah,
There's a bunch of networking events that happen here where we live, and they're hiring around the area. I mean, as you know,
yeah,
everything is
yeah.
growing where we are in South Austin. Um, and so all these new businesses are popping up, veteran friendly businesses, veteran owned businesses. And so they really just need to get people to help push and market and all of these things. And, there's been some job fairs recently, and some of them are veteran focused.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know that until I walked into a restaurant one day and they said, "Hey, we're doing this on Thursday."
Yeah. Another thing that would be good, I think, is I had no idea what LinkedIn was getting out of the
Hmm.
army. And I'm pretty sure LinkedIn's been around for a long time. But I mean,
I think so.
you do, you know, uh, that ought to be something that, the Army or whatever branch of military puts in there, like their ACAT process is they set you up with a LinkedIn profile or something. You know what I mean?
So I will tell you, you are episode 10. And I will tell you that based off of about 8 or 9 episodes, the ACAP process or the SFL TAP process getting out of the Army now, that is a requirement.
There you go.
It's one of the very first requirements is you have to create a LinkedIn profile.
That's awesome. I mean, that would have helped me leaps and bounds had I had that set up before I gotten out.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
I see that website now. I have my profile set up there, and I see all the messages all the time, all the posts about different job fairs for veterans, all these veteran events going on in my area, this and that. That would I'm glad that that's available now for somebody that's just trying to get out and doesn't really know what they want to do, doesn't really have a direction. That something like that is available to them, where they can direct them, give them some kind of direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And also it depending on how long you've been, that's the only in the Army, that's the only variable.
Yeah,
Is the amount of people that you may or may not have interacted with, but you somehow know, and they're all sitting around on LinkedIn, doing whatever it is. And honestly, a lot of the guests that I have coming up, I've reached out to them just on LinkedIn.
yeah,
Um, so it is a very powerful tool, and you can grow a network incredibly fast and in many different directions. There's a lot of, as you know, there's a lot of people who left El Paso, who also stayed in El Paso, but others who left El Paso to go do bigger and better things. And you can still probably get a hold of them on LinkedIn or any other social media out there.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, Sergio, I got 2 more questions to ask of you.
Go ahead.
All right. So, other than LinkedIn, what's one thing that you took away from your transition from field artillery surveyor to civilian, that you would offer as free piece of advice to anybody who's either thinking about getting out of the Army or military, or in the process of getting out?
Definitely, you've probably heard this before, but definitely have a well thought out plan, a plan that has realistically obtainable goals before you get out. It's like one of those plans that you need to like figure out, like you're about to go out on a new mission, and you need to know what your infill, your exfil, all your different avenues of approach. You need to have different options available to you when you get out. Housing options, where you want to go. If that plan falls through, another plan. Who can I count on? Start looking, feelers out for people in your, in a past network that you could have had before you got in the military. If they're still in the area, they might be able to help you out. Definitely, just set your network up, or be aware of the network that you have before you get out, and have a solid plan in place. And I know in my case, I was just anxious and ready to get out. I kind of had a general idea of what was going on in my head of what I wanted to do, but nothing like written down, nothing, no plan thought out where it was like I can act upon that plan. So just kind of like going by the wind. So if you're looking to get out, have a plan in place and have a plan B in place. and execute to your best ability.
Yeah. I want to go back to that part though where you mentioned have a plan and then also have a contingency
Yeah,
plan. And a lot of the reason why is because someone had brought this up to me the other day, um, and they said they can't get approval to get into a rental property
sure.
because they don't have a steady job at the moment. They're just about to get out of the military.
Right.
I think that that's something that needs to be addressed, or at least brought to mind. Is if you're getting out and you're coming out of the barracks and you're expecting to like try to jump into
Well, yeah, you have no rental.
an apartment complex, you're gonna have to figure out how you're gonna get that job at the same time you're getting a place to live.
Sure. I mean, that's fortunately that's not something I had to encounter when I got out. That would have been that would have been a significant hurdle getting out. And, like you said, coming out of the barracks, you have no rental history. If you're a soldier that had the unfortunate experience of having to live in the barracks the entire stint of your military career, which there are some that have
There
to
are
do
some.
that. But yeah, that's definitely something you have to figure out well in advance. Hopefully maybe you have some family in the area who's willing to like kind of vouch for you, or put their name. You know, I mean, if if your family, which I would hope your family would be able to trust you that much, to put their name down on the lease. That way, and eventually, get your name added to the lease. That way, you can start some kind of rental history.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, again, you have to have a reliable network. That's very, very crucial, especially in any kind of in the military transition.
Absolutely. All right. And so we get to the final question, which is what is one thing that you learned or did while you were in the army that you still do today?
I always check my gig line when I'm dressing up. When I my
Nice.
Before work, anytime I straighten out my button-down shirt, I always check my gig line, and that is just something I always line up, and it's always stuck with me from the military. You keep this edge of the gig line
Yep.
with so this would line up on the right, and you keep it on the far right of the buckle, all the way one line down, and you line up that buckle. I'm not gonna stand up, but
Please don't.
it's all the way down the front seam of your pants. That line goes all the way.
Absolutely. For those of you who did not know what a gig line was, because well, I tell you, we've been doing it for quite a long
Yep,
time,
it's all
uh, making sure that it's all in the right
Yep,
places. Everyone, take a moment, like, share, comment, subscribe. Thank you, Sergio, for all the time that you've given me today.
absolutely. Thank you for inviting me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely not a problem. And later, lads.